Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. In today's session, I'm excited. I have my friend Chuck Newman with me. So, Chuck, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell my audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Thank you. And I really appreciate you having me on today, Jeff. I'm a insurance broker, in simple. I've spent my career of now 34 years in this particular business, having grown an insurance agency that's focused on both life and health insurance. So I've worked with thousands of individuals, helping them secure their families with life insurance or their income with disability insurance, and helped hundreds of businesses here in the US, where our health system is providing health insurance primarily, excuse me, through your employer, if you're not receiving it from the government or as a veteran benefit, or as an individual who is not employed, you're getting your health insurance through your employer. So we help companies, whether they're small down to maybe 15, 20 people, or as large as 1,000 or more, get the best options for their employees, to help them really attract and retain employees as well.
I love it. Now, you and I have talked about off the air, off recording. We talked about some of your favorite life hacks, and I am absolutely fascinated by entrepreneurs who have, we live in a society where youth seems to be, everybody wants to talk to the young people. I like people like you and I who've earned our stripes, and we've got a little mileage on us. I like to think we're classic cars. We just get better with age. So how did you become the Chuck of today who, you've run this insurance agency, but I'm guessing you've got some life hacks you'd like to share that you've learned along the way. Is that fair?
It's one of the things I love to do, actually, Jeff, because I feel if I can impart anything, one thing that helps an entrepreneur, that they have in their mind as they move forward on their journey, and not make the mistakes that I made along the way, I'm happy if that happens. So I've done lots of different talks, and I've been thankful to participate in other podcasts where I've shared those kind of things. But going back, how do you become who you are? Well, I go to my dad, and my dad was an entrepreneur. Dad had to go right into the family business when his dad passed away, just shy of my dad's high school graduation, and that family business was propane and home heating oil distribution company. And later, my father and my uncle, as entrepreneurs, started a pleasure boat dealership here where we are in the Hudson Valley. But I observed my dad from a very young age, going out with him, hearing his conversations with customers, and then he might just tell me afterward, well, I told that customer such and such because, or I might ask him. But on the subject of asking, one of the lessons that Dad gave me was, you don't ask, you don't get. And that's a very basic thing, but you think about it, it's like, how do you get what you want? Well, if you don't ask, you're not going to get it. Another thing that I kind of took away from Dad, and he was the nicest guy, the most sweet-mannered man. In Yiddish, there's a term called a Mensch, and that's on his headstone. He was a Mensch, and always someone who did the right thing for people. But he did say, don't take no for an answer. No is not an answer. And, you figure out a way to get to yes, or, to find how you can get a yes. But you have to always do right by people, by your customers, by your community. You give back to your community. And you lead by example. And those were all things that I took away from my dad, affectionately known as Benny. So Benny gave me all those lessons early on.
Well, Chuck, if I may, I'd like to underline something because I think a lot of people have this assumption that to succeed in business, you have to be ruthless. And I really want to underline the word Mensch because to me, that says a lot. And totally random, but a friend of mine is teaching me Yiddish. So
it comes in handy. There's some words that in Yiddish you just don't have in English, but a Mensch I think translates people know what a Mensch is. But he was the nicest guy, but nice guys don't have to finish last.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to underline is a lot of
so ruthlessness. No, look, if you want to get to billionaire status, which maybe when I was in my 20s I aspired to, but maybe then it was millionaire, not billionaire. But perhaps there is some aspect of it. I don't know. I'm not a billionaire, but I've succeeded in achieving what I've sought to achieve, which is financial security and building a business that became a very valuable asset to me and my wife and our family by doing things the way I wanted to do them. So you, in my opinion, also have to know who you are and what your goals are. One thing I found out very early, I graduated from college. I was very interested in international relations, and I still am, in political science, and I still am. But I wanted to be in international trade, and I got a job in international trade out of college, and I did enjoy the aspect of working with people in other countries. Whether it was Europe or Canada or Japan or Central America. But guess what? I didn't think it through, and it didn't achieve my goals. It wasn't compatible with having a really stable family life because you had to travel a lot. And that's when I pivoted and ultimately got into insurance. But ruthlessness was never my strong suit. Being firm and confident and having goals and pursuing those goals does not mean you have to be ruthless about
it. And if I may, I know you well enough to say this, that you are a Mensch yourself. Benny,
I appreciate that.
Benny clearly rubbed off.
That in that regard, but I appreciate that.
It shines through, and it's funny because Mensch is something I aspire to be every day. It's like, and I don't believe if you think you're there, I think you stop trying. But I think it's Perhaps. One of those mountains you want to keep climbing. I'm going to give you a weird little gift that I got from an actual billionaire I interviewed, and he said, when I started out, I was ruthless with my time. That's the only ruthless that there was room for. And basically once somewhere around the $200 million mark, it would stop being about him and it was about his impact in helping other people. And he said it was just fascinating. The more I helped other people, the more wealth I accumulated and the more people I could help.
It's interesting because they tell you that when you're young and you're entrepreneurial and you're being mentored, or you're reading the books on people who were successful, and they say, you have to give to get. You don't necessarily believe it at that age because you don't have enough to give, perhaps, and you're trying to get, but it is true. And I have in my employee benefits career and in my business focused in one of the core areas and one of the, as they say, vertical markets that we've been working on for many years on the nonprofit market. And why? Because it crystallized for me 15, 20 years ago when I saw one more example of a broker in my business not doing the right job for a nonprofit and mailing it in and wasting their money. And having been a lifelong volunteer, and that's something also where I observed my dad as a volunteer in the community, helping people. He was with the Lions Club in our town, and creating all ways to help people who were coming out of the hospital and needed convalescent services, beds and wheelchairs, walkers, whatever it was, and going out and distributing those with him, and seeing that and seeing the respect that he was accorded because of that. But not just that, just doing good and still being a good businessman was the example. And getting back to my business, I thought, well, I need to be the one. I need to be the one to be the person in my business in employee benefits that supports nonprofits, because I'm not seeing other people do it the way I would do it. And I'm proud to say that I've helped hundreds of nonprofits, saved probably millions of dollars, while still providing great benefits to their employees and achieving their goals.
Well, and I'm sensing something I want to pull out, because I think this is important. I used to think philanthropy was giving away my stuff and helping others for free. And then somebody, again, it was this very same billionaire. Let's just be clear. He was not a nice man. He was very much, his good was because he wanted to be better than everybody else. Like it was fascinating. He did good as a selfish motivation, and he wanted to get into heaven, and I respect that. But it was just very much, it was a contest for him who does the most good. But I want to pull out that a lot of nonprofits don't apply the principles of business sense. We just before we recorded, we were talking about, the percentages that go to overhead, and the status quo and the scarcity mindset. I love number one, and the lesson he gave me was that the greatest philanthropy you can do is to grow your business and make money so that you can help others grow their businesses and make money.
Well, I think Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have provided examples for us. I'm no Bill Gates, I'm no Warren Buffett, as I said before, but Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation has given away something like 200 billion. I mean, just astronomical numbers, but and will give away a lot more, and has saved countless lives through the mosquito netting, Africa, and vaccinations and all kinds of programs. But the fact of the matter is that in the nonprofit community, the scarcity mindset unfortunately does undermine sometimes, not always, for sure. And I don't want to paint the nonprofit community with a broad brush like that, because there are many, many nonprofits. They're keeping an eye on the bottom line. They are excellent stewards of the philanthropy that they are fortunate to receive. I have seen some, though, and I was just talking about this, having been at a nonprofit fundraiser last night. I was talking about another fundraiser that I had gone to, where I just thought it was over the top, and there were dancers and aerialists and people, flamethrowers, and just why we're at a nonprofit fundraiser. Let's keep the overhead low. People really want to give to you. They don't need the show. So sometimes, there can be a little bit of like going overboard to think you need to do things. Perhaps I can't, I'm not an event organizer or event planner, but I've just seen that. But even so, it should never dissuade anyone from giving where it feels good for them to give. And particularly now, there's so much need. There's always been so much need. But in the United States, we're facing a situation where so many government entities have already been defunded by the Trump administration, and more maybe by a bill that's going through Congress that will be a new budget bill. And nonprofits, every nonprofit in the United States, pretty much I could say, will be impacted by this. So they're going to need support from the community like never before.
And I think this is an opportunity. I see opportunity in every adversity, but I think it's an opportunity where they can start to apply and I hope maybe this podcast plants a seed. Some of the entrepreneurial hacks, the life hacks you've got, I think a lot of nonprofits, and you have entrepreneurs on your board, listen to them, because I think again there's a balance between one of my favorite nonprofits here. They were trying to raise money, and somebody said, well, you also provide a service. That service requires it's a rehabilitation service. They started selling the rehabilitation equipment, and it turns out it was their best fundraiser, because these people need to buy the equipment anyways. Why not buy it from them and get a little bit of a margin?
Yeah, I mean, it's not always the case that they can apply the same kind of principles for sure that a business will. But the kind of working from the philanthropic side and why that's good for business. One of my takeaways or hacks is, as we discussed, I put it before, is that you've got to give to get. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't mean money necessarily, but you put altruism out there. You do things for people without the expectation of a return. And when you do that altruistically, and when you do that, you give your referrals in a business case, right? There are various partners that any business has. It may rely on them for referrals. They may rely on the business may rely on their supporters and contractors for referrals, and vice versa. But give your time, give your advice if people will be willing to hear it. Of course, give your money if it's a nonprofit, but you will. And the trite phrase that I used for many years, but that always stuck in my head, is you're doing well while doing good. You're doing well while doing good, and there's nothing wrong with doing well for your business. So, applying those principles to business, that's the thing. What I say, Jeff, is that a lot of these things kind of have rattled around in my head for many years. And I told you about my first business, which was import-export, the export trading business. And I learned a lot of things there. Actually, predating that in college, one of the things I learned, and you remember President George Bush, the first George Bush, who had been vice president. He was a very accomplished guy who had been the ambassador to China for the United States and lots of other things. But he, to me, at that time in the 1980s, I just was like, how is this guy, qualified to be president, or how did he get here? And someone said, well, he's got the biggest Rolodex. Yep. And for those who don't know what a Rolodex is, it's a CRM. It's an analog CRM. It's a way to keep track of everyone's phone numbers and addresses, and even birthdays and whatever you want to put on there, a card catalog. But that's one of the lessons I learned in college. You have to network, get out there, form a big Rolodex. But I had a great boss in my first job in that export trading company, and he gave me some great lessons too. And one was, always ask the next question. And just think about that, Jeff. Always ask the next question. What does that mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
Well, what is the next question? So if you're in a business situation and it's up to you to kind of uncover the need, right? We always talk about uncovering the need in an entrepreneurial situation. You're trying to sell something. What is the next question? Saying always ask the next question forces you to say, what should I be thinking? What should I be asking? And I thought, that's one of the things that's kind of rattled around in my head all these years since that first job. And I guess another lesson there is, like, no experience in your career journey is wasted. Particularly if you can glean some of these lessons early on. Another lesson that I learned in that first job was, you can ask anything to anyone. It just depends on how you ask it or say it. So be confident in that, and have fun in business. And people forget that too. Sometimes I have people call me and they're trying to get our business, and they're very kind of buttoned down, like, yeah, loosen up a little bit, it's, just have some fun. Let's, not tell a joke necessarily, but keep it human.
Yeah. And I think that's, I'd like to pull that thread a little harder, because I think a lot of people have their professional face and then they have their human face. And I'm lucky. I'm autistic. I have one face. It's like, this is how I am. And, I can't pretend to be what I'm not. I just show up as I am. And people respond one of two ways. Either they really like it, they resonate, you and I were having a conversation, or they go, yeah, you're a bit much. I don't need that. And it's like, okay, thank you. Either way, it's a good experience, because I know who my people are, and I'm not trying to be someone else that I'm not. And between you and me, Chuck, I used to wear, I'm a recovering accountant. I used to wear the gray or navy suit. It was depending on the year. That was
I wore the suit.
And I realized that when I wore the suit, I brought very serious people to my world, because, oh, Jeff looks professional. I just started wearing the Hawaiian shirts because it annoyed the people who liked the suits.
I think post-COVID, if there's any silver lining to COVID, which, you have to look for, hard to see sometimes, but, one of them, of course, is the ability to have virtual meetings and conversations such as we're having today. But it's that formality, that kind of forced formality, not always, but a lot of it's gone. You see so many business leaders not wearing ties, and wearing a sport jacket, or maybe not even wearing a sport jacket, whatever it is. So, I think that artifice has gone to a large degree. But to your point about putting that professional foot forward, you do need to act professionally, but that doesn't mean, it means you have to be fake.
Yeah. There's a line between acting professional and being fake. And
absolutely. And I will tell anyone, that after that business, the trading, export trading, when I decided, that really wasn't for me, the next step on my journey, my best friend was working with me at that trading company. We needed someone to help in sales. I told my boss about my buddy who was kind of struggling in a sales job, and brought him in, hired him, was working there for a number of years successfully. We were working together, fantastic. And then he decided before me, he learned before me, it wasn't the right fit, wasn't the right job, wasn't the right career for him. So he started a business in the late 80s, a mobile auto detailing business.
wow.
When that wasn't a thing at that point so much, but it was the hot new Inc. magazine business for 1988. And it grew very quickly, and he needed help within a few months. And I cashed in my retirement plan and plunked it down, bought some equipment, and went in with him. And that business continued to grow quickly until the recession of 1991. But having failed is what the point I'm getting to. Having failed in that business, and I call it an excellent midlife, because it really injects humility. It allows you to think about who I am. Why didn't I have a roadmap that got here? Why didn't I know that more employees doesn't mean more profit? Why didn't I plan for a down cycle? And I didn't. Nobody told me about recessions.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, it's not true, because when I graduated from college, we were in a recession. But I learned those lessons, and that kind of humility, I think, enables you to be more of a person, more of a human. Harkening back, another lesson that I got at that time that I learned from my best friend, who I was in business with, is he was so confident and would ask for forgiveness instead of permission. Another trite phrase, but you know what? It doesn't mean you're not nice. It doesn't mean you're not human. It doesn't mean you're ruthless. You have certain goals, and you got to go ahead and not wait for the permission to pursue them.
Yeah.
So in everything, even in failure, the point is that there was success in getting those lessons. And for a while, I thought that a multi-level marketing business was going to save me. After that business, I could see wasn't going to work out in the recession. And so multi-levels typically in a recession do very well because they recruit a lot of people, and their model is to recruit sometimes more than to sell the product. But I learned some great lessons in that multi-level, and read some great books. And I know you're a fan, Jeff, of books. And so Napoleon Hill, the father of self-help books with Think and Grow Rich, or there was another one about facing challenges straight on and not trying to make end run, but going straight through. It's called Rhinoceros Success by a guy named Scott Alexander. But one of the things that today, and that I imparted to my team in our business, employee benefits, was one phrase that I learned from Jeff Olson. That is this: successful people do the things unsuccessful people are unable or unwilling to do. And that one phrase, in addition to when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot, which was Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's. And I'll tell you a little story about that if you'd like to hear it. But yes. In any event, successful people do the things. If you asked anyone on my team, if you say, what do successful people do? They'll say successful people do the things unsuccessful people are unable or unwilling to do, because I kept pounding on that. Because when you are tired and you've made 100 phone calls and you've been on the road all day and there's one more thing you need to go to, but you could blow it off and go home or go have a beer or whatever it is that you've been invited to do or have the opportunity to do, you think of that. Successful people do the things that unsuccessful people are unable or unwilling to do. So again, even in that multi-level business, that wasn't a good choice, and it wasn't, I learned some things that really enabled me to move forward in my career.
I love that. And I think the thing that separates entrepreneurs from most people is our resilience. I mean, you have to be slightly crazy to take the risk, jump out of a perfectly good airplane, hoping your parachute opens. And, sometimes we build it on the way down. But I think most entrepreneurs I know, they've learned more. And I've learned more from what others have labeled. My mom would say, "Oh, you failed at that." Thanks, Mom.
Failure is an excellent midwife, Mom.
Yeah, I have learned more from every externally labeled failure than I've learned from my successes. And I think there's always a nugget or a gem or something.
Absolutely. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And just between you and me and whoever might be listening, this podcast was inspired by Napoleon Hill, because it saddens me that his notes for the book Think and Grow Rich somehow got lost to time. And
no kidding.
I was like, I want those notes. Like, there's a lot of handwritten stuff. There's a lot of what he spoke about publicly. But the thing that's missing, and this is really sad to me, is he actually had transcripts of every interview he did, including his questions. And he did this, like, Think and Grow Rich was a 20-some year research project into what made successful people successful. Mm-hmm. And he came up with 13 core principles. So this podcast is my desire to recreate and try to figure out what he did. The other thing, I love Jeff Olson and his co-author, John David Mann from The Slight Edge. I'm going to go one step further, and I'm going to throw in Atomic Habits by James Clear. And somewhere in there, I think he says something to the effect of, we rise to the level of our systems. And that to me was first of all, it was a little annoying, and then it was a relief, because it was like, wow, I can do that. But really, it's in his world, he systemizes the things that most people won't do. And it's
it's hard.
Yeah, it's like making that one extra call when you come back and you're tired. It's like pushing, having that one extra email you send out, reaching out and saying, hey, I hear you did something in your life. Congratulations. It's the building the relationships that most people don't bother with.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if I had that system, Jeff. I was, but just going back to something you just said about entrepreneurs, there's a wonderful comedic song by a guy named Frank Crummett from 1938 called There's No One with Endurance Like the Man Who Sells Insurance. And so it's fabulous. And I just get a kick out of it. But if you think about it, the reputation of insurance agents is kind of, dogged, and I never want to be that. One of the things another kind of phrase that's stuck in my mind is pleasant persistence rather than pushiness. Yeah. Never want to be perceived as pushy, but people appreciate pleasant persistence. Yeah. If it's a no, it's a no at the end of the day. But you know what? There's another phrase: some will, some won't. So what? Next. Right?
Chuck, I just taught my boys that phrase.
Did you?
Yeah, we were in the car and one of them was complaining about somebody at school. And I said, I'm going to give you the greatest phrase I've ever heard that will guide every aspect of your life. And it was fascinating because my 12-year-old got it like that. My 16-year-old, he was like, huh. And it was just, I saw the light come on and I was like, how much of our life do we spend worrying about the some that won't?
But some won't. So what? Next. Yep. There's a lot of fish in the sea. But another one of those that you just brought to mind, this is something that also, just like successful people do the things, commitment. What's commitment? It's doing the things you said you would do long after the mood in which you said them has passed. That was Darren Hardy. And those things, like every day, those can help, in my opinion. They can help an entrepreneur who's struggling, because if you keep thinking about that and you truly are committed to the endeavor and you do have a plan, which of course we know what happens when we fail to plan. But all those things kind of enter into the mix.
Now, Chuck, I could talk to you for hours because you and I, we've clearly read the same books. We clearly have some of the same beliefs. And I truly wish I could have met Benny, and I am happy that I got to meet you. Where can people go to connect with you? And just, you are as genuine as you appear to be. And I think you're a great human being.
I appreciate that. I mean, LinkedIn, Charles Newman. My formal name is Charles J. Newman. So Charles Newman on LinkedIn for sure. My company URL is still up there, charlesnewman.com. And I kept it simple so I could always remember it. But my company, I did sell my company to the Hill Group, which is a wonderful in the U.S. Nationwide agency. The Hill Group with well over 100 offices and I think more than 35 states now. But if you use charlesnewman.com, it still goes to me, and I'm Chuck at charlesnewman.com is my email. So I just try to keep things as simple as possible. The old business phone number here in the US, by the way, was the area code 914, but 345-1000. How can you get more easy?
I love that. For what it's worth, you are a Chuck to me. Charles feels like you should be wearing a suit and a tie.
I agree. Yeah.
You're a Mensch, and I think Mensches have to be called Chuck. Is that fair?
Okay. I'll take it. Thank you, Jeff.
Sorry, I've given you your Mensch name without you asking, but there you go. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me. It was an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to our next conversations. I think they're going to be equally fun.
I hope to have that one with you, Jeff. Thank you again for having me.